We are April and Scott, creators of NaughtyGym.com, and this is The Naughty Gym Show.
For years, we've been fitness and nutrition coaches to thousands of people through our commercial gyms and online platform. We've also spent nearly a decade in an ever-evolving open relationship.
This show brings together two of our biggest passions, fitness and sex positivity. Our mission is to maximize the physical and mental health of anyone brave enough to explore relationship structures that run counter to societal norms.
We have demolished our old ways of thinking about relationships, and from that rubble, built a life full of happiness, adventure, and vitality. And now we want to help you do the same.
So hop on the treadmill, start the show, and let us teach you how to never stop playing.
Okay, guys, before we get started on this next episode of our podcast, which is also going to be a part of our YouTube series, our 10-part series, So You Want to Be a Swinger, we wanted to give a brief little message before we start.
Yeah, so we aren't advocating the use of drugs. We are just highlighting the fact that they are around, right? And we would rather you have education about how to use them safely than to go off on your own and be irresponsible.
So we brought in an expert, one of the best in the country, to talk to about these issues, and we hope you will find this informative and entertaining. All right, welcome to episode 6 now of our 10-part series, So You Want to Be a Swinger. And I'm Scott, and April. This is April.
Yeah, I'm April.
And we have our guest today, Ashley Manta, who is coming to our event at Hedonism in January of 2024, and she is an expert on the intersection of cannabis and sex. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott and April.
Yeah, which officially makes her the Cannasexual, right? That's your official name, created by you.
Yes.
And I want to know how you became the Cannasexual.
April, that's such a great question. So I have been a sex educator since 2007. I got my start when I was still in college, but my focus back then was doing a lot of sexual violence prevention education. I was a rape crisis counselor, domestic violence crisis counselor. I would go out to K through 12 schools and talk about stranger danger and respectful relationships and just all forms of making sure that people felt safer in their bodies and in their relationships.
Wow.
And it actually led me to become a victim advocate for the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. So I was going to court every day, working with victims, helping them through the legal process. And I burned out. It was a really challenging line of work. I'm grateful for the experience. I'm grateful for like having some really on the ground training in trauma because so many people have trauma these days.
Right.
But it was not sustainable for me as a career choice. So I pivoted slightly to reproductive health. I worked at Planned Parenthood for a year when I was still living in Pennsylvania. And that was great, learning all about birth control and STIs and how people talk about safer sex and things like that. So that was very valuable for me. And then I moved to California in 2013. And I didn't know anyone and no one knew me. And I had access to medical cannabis for the first time ever, having grown up in a prohibition state.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this is such a game changer. For one, just like walking into a dispensary and having so many options as opposed to like sneakily finding a dealer and being like, you got any salad? You know, like it was so not stealthy, but kind of trying to be stealthy. And so I started working as a phone sex operator. That was like the fastest way I could think of to make money quickly. Yes.
I love it.
Oh my goodness. I've got a million questions. Was that fun? Did you like that?
I need you to write a biography.
Oh, there is a memoir coming for sure.
How long did you do that? The phone sex?
For about 9 or 10 months.
Wow.
That was good, bad?
It was a little bit of both. I learned a lot. I became very good at phone sex, which was helpful. It was really kind of a baptism by fire. So it's like, all right, you nervous about saying dirty things out loud? Here you go. Here's every day. You're just like improv because you never know what someone's going to say when you answer the phone. They might want to do an alien sex scene. They might want you to be their mistress. They might want you to be their, naughty maid. Like, you just never quite can tell. So you have to be prepared for whatever. So I learned a ton, and it made me realize that the pleasurable side of sex was much more interesting and sustainable for me. So now I'm doing like body confidence, dirty talk classes. And meanwhile, like having my own trauma in my body and experiencing pain with penetration, which is something that I had lived with my entire adult life. Mm-hmm. And then there was a company that was putting THC into a topical to put on your pussy.
Really?
And that blew my mind. And I tried it. I met with their marketing rep, and we went to this beautiful bar in Beverly Hills, and she bought me drinks and handed me this little vial of THC oil. She's like, go home.
That's how you get in trouble right there. That's
right?
That's how you end up in the back of a van.
Oh my God. I was like, I am in California now. Like, this is a business meeting. Okay, cool. She's like, put this on your pussy, wait 20 minutes, and then masturbate. And I'm like, I have made all of the correct life choices to lead to this place right now. Excellent. So I did. And I was able to experience penetration without pain for the first time.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And
now, can I ask you a question real quick?
Please.
And this may be too personal, but because there are a lot of women that deal with pain because of penetration for whatever reasons, PCOS or, endometriosis. Was that part of you had some medical issues, or it was just, that's how you're built?
No, mine was sexual trauma, which is also very common for people who are sexual violence survivors to have pain with penetration.
Okay. Yeah.
And so for me, it was my brain was clenching down every time penetration was happening. And so the THC allowed my body to kind of relax a little bit and enjoy what was happening. And I kind of looked around the field of sexuality and realized I didn't know any sex professionals who were talking about sex and cannabis. Up to that point, most of us had been very hardline, like, you don't mix substances and sex because consent.
Right.
Like all the things that I spent the first part of my career like railing against, like sex and substances are very different things that happen. And I realized with cannabis, there's nuance to be had. So Cannasexual was born.
That's amazing.
And so you're going to talk about some of this stuff, particularly the intersection of cannabis and sex at our event at Hedonism in January next year, which we're super excited about. You're going to be doing a keynote address. I don't even know if you know that yet, but
I'm so excited.
And you're also going to be you're going to talk about some other potential party type drugs that we'll hit here in a minute, and maybe doing some of those educational type hands-on, we'll call it hands-on seminars.
My boyfriend is so excited to be the demo.
Yeah, I know you
what
mentioned
a great position to be in.
The possibility of doing like poolside blowjob classes or something, which I'm incredibly excited for the women to learn while we're there. Maybe I should take that class too. I don't know.
I think you should. Also, I'll be doing poolside prostate stimulation classes, so it's really something for everyone.
Scott volunteers.
Yeah, I'll volunteer for that. So we're excited that you're going to be there. The team, and you've helped us put together a fantastic team of people that are going to this. It's going to be incredibly exciting. All right, so you rubbed it on your pussy, and you had great penetrative intercourse for the first time.
Yes.
But I don't think that's it, right? As far as your expertise, it's not just about topical solutions. It's about other ways of integrating it into your sex life. So I want to say that we have experimented with cannabis in different forms, smoking, gummies, that kind of thing. Only, of course, in places where it's totally legal. I say that for anybody listening. I have trouble staying conscious on basically any strain of marijuana. And maybe I'm taking too much or the wrong stuff, but I've tried a lot of different strains. Is that just my biological makeup, or am I doing it wrong? How do you use this stuff for sex and stay energized?
So it is a little bit different for everyone, but I subscribe deeply to the philosophy that less is more. So I'm not sure how much you're using. I mean, edibles, honestly, I tend to put to the side because they do tend to be a downer no matter what you're using. Like, I have seen advertised like sativa edibles. That's bullshit. We'll talk about why later. But it's, unless they're putting caffeine in it, there is nothing about any particular kind of edible that is going to give you energy. So that's always going to be a downer. Smoking, I would say a puff, just like one, like a little, and exhale right away and wait 10 minutes and see how you feel. And then add more if you so choose. But if you're like puffing along, you're going to get tired. There's a window with THC, and inside the window you're good, and outside the window you're not having a good time.
Yeah.
So is there a difference between smoking, and I don't know if I'm using the right terms because I'm such a novice about this stuff,
Okay.
a rolled joint versus vaping?
Yes.
Okay, so which one would give you potentially a better energized feeling, or does it matter?
It really depends on the person. Like, I know I keep saying that, but it is, everyone's a little bit different. I tend to not like the vape cartridges as much. It's more processed. It tends to have more like shit in it, depending on who you're getting it from. So I tend to be more of a flower purist, the smoking a joint or packing a bowl or what have you. And then in terms of that, it depends on the terpene content and the THC content. So like what the breakdown of cannabinoids and terpenes is. Terpenes are the things that make plants smell the way that they do. Cannabinoids are THC, CBD, CBN, THCV, like all of those different compounds.
All right, well, let me give you
how they work best with your body.
Well, let me give you a specific example. I think April should tell this story, but we were going to experiment because we were at Hedonism several months back, and we already knew you were coming, and we had, I don't think at that point had ever had sex while we were high on marijuana.
Okay.
So we decided that night that we were going
Mostly because Scott falls asleep immediately.
Yeah. So we were going to try it that night because usually when we do it, we're at home and in bed. And so it's just conducive to going to sleep. But we were going to be at the party that night. So I went to the Hedo store because it's legal in Jamaica. They have a store on site. And I said, I want what you have. We were getting a flower. Is that what you call it? A rolled joint. Yeah. And I said, but I want the weakest strain you have that will give us the least amount of sleepiness. He said, all right, this is the weakest. This is the least concentration we have. It's sativa. You're going to be fine. So April, pick it up from there. 5 minutes before the party or the entertainment of the night started.
So we go outside. We take a few little hits. Nothing, really bad. And I've had some history with it. We start walking into the room where the show is going to happen. Get to a table, sit down. Scott says, do you want a drink? I said, yeah, I'll have a champagne. He goes to the bar and is gone for what feels like 4 hours. In that time, I'm sitting down and cannot move because I was so afraid I was going to fall out of my chair. I'm like, okay, just act normal, smile. I can't even imagine what my face must have looked like. I was terrified. I'm like, he's abandoned me. He's left me. I'm here with everybody's staring at me. And so he comes back eventually. I'm like, oh my God, why did you leave me? He's like, I've been gone for 4 minutes. I'm like, you have to take me back to the room. And so he starts leaving and I'm like, no, come get me. You have to come back and get me.
So I literally walked to the bar where there was no line. I walked straight to the bar. I said, what do you want? I said, I want a shot of vodka, Diet Coke, and a glass of champagne. And he immediately poured it. I immediately walked back to the table. And she is sitting upright, holding on to the sides of her chair. And when she saw me coming, instead of turning to look at me, she did one of these where she's too afraid to even turn her head because she was afraid she was going to fall out of the chair. Yeah. And I had to hook up under her arms to get her to walk back to the room. And we took 1 or 2 little drags off of that marijuana cigarette. Needless to say, we didn't have sex. We missed the whole party, the rest of the night.
We did get snacks.
Yeah, we got snacks. So help us out. Make us better marijuana users.
All right. So first things first, I never test a strain in the game. You always test in practice.
Okay.
Okay.
Good rule of thumb.
Right? So this is not a game time audible to use sports metaphors for Scott, right? Like this is something that you practice with over like a couple of times in the room when you're solo, to kind of see how it goes. That's one thing. 2 is you start with 1 hit. One small hit, that's it. And it feels like it's like you want to sip on a drink all night, just like you want to smoke on a joint or like you smoke a cigarette. So it's a completely different experience than smoking a cigarette. You have to just take, that's it. The other thing is I don't mix alcohol and cannabis.
Okay, that's good to know too. That's probably smart.
Is very unpredictable. Each exacerbates the effects of the other. And so you got to pick a lane. Either you're drinking or you're smoking. But if you're crossfading, I certainly would not be having sex, because at that point you are much too intoxicated to be like making good decisions. And so that's the other piece. Like, if you don't know how something's going to hit you and now you're going to a party, like you, April, would have been in no position to negotiate for yourself in that environment.
Right. I agree. Yeah.
So it's good to have a sense going in of, this is how much I need, and this is what it's going to do for me when I do it. And so I can kind of time it appropriately. So it does take a little bit more legwork than just sipping on a cocktail.
All right. So if you're planning on having sex, you shouldn't, it sounds like you should not approach smoking with the idea of, I'm about to get really high, because you probably crossed the line at that point. It's more of like just a bit to take the edge off kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, we've been doing that wrong.
Yeah. If you're high, unless you are a seasoned, like, you know what your high feels like, high feels good to you, like you're solid, you can cruise at that altitude. Now, you want to just enough to get out of your head, to do that time distortion where 4 minutes feels like 4 hours, because that feels really good when you're being touched. It's like, oh, you've been touching me forever, but it hasn't been that long. And that's a fun thing to surf through. But fun. Like at an event, that's a little dicey. So you want to just enough to make yourself feel comfortable and social and friendly and giggly and like, oh, like, that's nice. Oh, that's nice is where you want to be.
Okay.
Not, oh, fuck.
Well, and we bring this up. You know, we wanted to talk to you about this because this series of interviews are about kind of giving people an overview of the types of things to expect, how to navigate first getting started in some form of open relationship, consensual non-monogamy, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. None of this stuff obviously is required for your journey into non-monogamy. However, if you go to enough things, events, parties, you're probably going to see it. And you're probably going to be approached by people nicely, asking you if you want, hey, would you like a hit, or would you like some of this other stuff that we'll talk about as well? It seems like marijuana in particular has rapidly grown in popularity over the last few years, that it's becoming less stigmatized and more accepted into mainstream culture. Is that what you're seeing as well? And do you have some insight on why that might be?
I mean, it's definitely happening. I would say legalization sweeping the country is helping a lot, because more people have access to it now. And because of that, there's more people talking about it, whereas I was one of the very few, arguably one of the first in 2014, 2015 to be talking about sex and cannabis. Now there's a bunch of people talking about it. And there's vape companies, and there's trade shows, and there's all sorts of like different ways you can be in the cannabis industry. And so it's become much more normalized. It's being represented in popular media now. It's not uncommon to see celebrities smoking weed. So people feel a little bit less like, oh man, it's the devil's lettuce, this like gross racist prohibition era bullshit that like we had a lot of stigma around cannabis use. Now it's like, oh, CEOs smoke weed, so I guess it's like not so scary.
Right. Yeah.
But is it dangerous? That's what I grew up. We're in Alabama, deep South. I grew up thinking that if I smoked it, I was probably addicted, and once I did it 3 times, I was probably dead. So how dangerous is this stuff? Can you overdose? You
cannot possibly consume enough, certainly smoking, to overdose. Even if you ate a shit ton of edibles, it's not enough to kill you. You'll feel real shitty. You might wish that you were dead, but you will not actually die. It's just not a deadly substance. Like, that is one of the pieces of propaganda that was put out, that like, oh, it's going to kill you. Or you're going to smoke it, and the next thing you know, you're going to be shooting heroin. Like that, it's a gateway drug. That's not true either. In fact, people that smoke weed are actually less likely to do other drugs because it feels so damn good. Like it's just, you don't need anything else. Like, I stopped drinking 8 years ago because now that I smoke, I don't get hangovers. I feel great. It's more social. My body feels better. And so there's not the danger that you're told that cannabis can be. So it is impossible to overdose. You're cool. You've been lied to.
Well, I tend to sleep pretty well on it. April, maybe not quite as well. Would that be, is that fair, April? You don't sleep that well on it, do you?
No, I don't sleep. I don't sleep real great on it.
Is that because she's taking the wrong type? Or, I mean, I guess it's hard to say, isn't it?
It's hard to say. Everyone's a little bit different. And the one thing kind of across the board that cannabis does, which I like, is that it makes you dream less or less vividly, which I see as a feature, not a bug. But some people are like, oh, I miss my dreams. Like when I smoke weed. I don't. I have nightmares. So I'm like,
oh,
every night I'm like, fuck
yeah,
you.
That can be bad.
It's no fun. But it depends on your tolerance. It depends on what you're consuming. It depends on how much. Like there's a lot of factors in terms of sleep. Edibles tend to be better for sleep than, I mean, there's certain strains that can be great for sleep, but it does vary pretty widely. And as always, less is more. Like you don't need to smoke yourself into a stupor.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So that all kind of takes us back to, so in Alabama, marijuana is not legal. However, we can buy the Delta 8 variant. So can you, do you know the difference, or can you tell us the difference between the different strands and why that might be legal here and not the Delta 9 or any other variants?
Sure. So it's all a lot of legal jargon and technical bullshit, but the short, very broad, basic version is that there is this thing called the Farm Bill, and in 2018, they legalized hemp, not just for commercial use, but also for can be used recreationally. And hemp is, by definition, it's cannabis. Cannabis and hemp are the same, except hemp, to receive the designation of hemp, it has to have less than 0.3% THC by dry weight.
Okay.
So what that means is, like, when the plant is growing out of the ground, if you were to pick a bud off of the plant, chew it, swallow it, eat it, nothing would happen because it's THC in the acid form, THCA. When you heat it, it becomes Delta 9 THC. That's the one that is illegal. That's the one in various states. That's the one that gets you high, or that you most typically associate with the high feeling. What they found is that they can play with hemp plants that only make the 0.3% THC, and they do some chemical wizardry to turn it into Delta 8, which is technically not regulated. So it's in sort of a regulatory gray area. I don't fuck with Delta 8 or Delta 11 or Delta 10 or any of these like designer THC varietals, because what you're doing is you're chemically fucking with the plant.
Okay.
At that point, like there are ways of extracting THC and different things like that, but like the things that you have to do to it to make it Delta 8, I'm not wild about. I tend to be like, either you want to use the plant, so go somewhere that you can, or just don't. Mm-hmm. But that's, for me, not too much different than like buying it at a gas station, you know, back in the day when it was like K2 spice. Like they're not quite as bad, but I side-eye Delta 8 pretty hard, personally.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, I've got some stock I might need to get rid of.
Yeah, get rid of that.
Well, so I can say that may be why I'm not sleeping really well too, because I've had other gummies from California where I slept wonderful. And it could be the way that they extract it and whatever chemicals and stuff are in there that is kind of messing with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah, so I could see how this would be beneficial then in a lifestyle situation if you get the dose right, where you just knock the edge off barely, because a lot of times, especially if you're new coming into these parties, resorts, takeovers, whatever, it is a nerve-wracking experience, you know, that first few times that you go, and maybe just a touch, for the same reason a lot of people have a drink or two, is to try to give them a little bit of that courage that they're missing without it.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think sex and cannabis are great to mix together in an established relationship. I don't actually recommend it with new partners.
Ah, okay.
And you know, lifestylers may look at me and be like, what the fuck? That's not fun. But hear me out. Honestly, I don't recommend having more than a drink and playing with new partners, because when you're with someone new, you don't know them. You may have negotiated. Hopefully you've negotiated, but like, you don't know what their body does when they're not having a good time. You don't have the trust built that they will speak up if something needs to be different. And when you throw an intoxicant on top of that, you're just asking for trouble.
Yeah.
So use topicals, use suppositories, use things that are non-intoxicating by all means. Smoke a little bit and play with your partner in a group setting, where you can watch and be watched. That's super hot and fun. But like, to smoke and then go in and play with somebody who's new, who may be new to the lifestyle, like, that's just a lot of variables that, coming from a sexual violence prevention background, I don't love.
Yeah.
It's difficult when you're first starting to navigate this environment anyway.
Right, exactly.
Well, it's difficult even if you're not new in this environment. And I know I've come back to a lot of women struggle to use their voice. Anyways, I did for years, and I think I'm a pretty alpha woman in most scenarios. And it was really difficult for me to use my voice in a lot of play sessions sober. And so I can imagine under the influence, it's a lot harder. And I mean, do you really have consent if the person that you're playing with is inebriated or super high or, whatever? It's not really a consent.
That's the thing. Like, my golden rule has always been negotiate before you medicate. So if you're going into a new situation already buzzed and you meet someone and now you're trying to negotiate while you're both buzzed, like, no, you can't consent.
Right.
You legally cannot consent.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, so let's talk about other things that people are likely to encounter at some of these parties.
Sure.
A very common one would be MDMA, ecstasy. I don't know if those are exact. I don't think they're exactly the same, but they're very close. Ketamine is another big one. Psilocybin or mushrooms, a big one. LSD, a big one. All of those things sound like felony jail time things to a guy raised in Alabama.
I think some of those are.
I hear that. Yes.
Well, right. And they're illegal here, so you can't do them in Alabama anyway. But you're going to see these things at some of these parties. And we're not trying to scare people that are very anti-drug or anti-alcohol, that, people are very respectful about it. But those types of things exist in these environments. What is your overview of these types of psychedelics? Are they good for sexual encounters? Can they be if done the right way, or they should be avoided at all costs? Just give us kind of your opinion on them.
Absolutely. So I do come from a risk management perspective. So yes, I believe they can be good when done well, when done intentionally. Mushrooms, I think, are one of the most beginner friendly, because there's so many like microdose options now. And I think a microdose is a great place to start. Like, you don't need to be tripping balls the first time you do mushrooms. Like, that's not necessary. Certainly not in a partnered or group sex setting like that. With the other drugs, with LSD, with MDMA, with ketamine, anything that's powdery or that you're getting in a tab form, you need to be able to test that. Like, we live in a fentanyl world, and especially the powders like MDMA and ketamine, cocaine, you need to be testing your drugs. And so that means if you see some hottie at a party and they're like, do you want to do a bump off my ass? The answer is no.
Right.
Like, it seems like a great idea. You're at this thing. Everything is like wild and free. No.
Right.
Risk management. Like,
well, and it's not even that person is a bad person.
No.
And is trying to give you something bad, but sometimes they may not be testing their stuff.
Exactly.
And that's, just putting your life at risk, essentially.
It is. I would encourage everyone to carry fentanyl test strips with them when they travel. If they're going to be going to places where there will be different kind of powdery drugs, keep Narcan in your purse, in your bag, in your suitcase.
What's
Narcan? Is a thing to reverse an opiate overdose. So if someone does happen to get some fentanyl, if you apply Narcan, it can revive them. Because sometimes they will literally die before like paramedics can show up. So Narcan can help keep them alive. And watch a YouTube video on how to give someone Narcan. Like, you can buy it over the counter and just keep it with you. Like, that's a really good practice to have when you're going into any kind of party drug setting. And that's why I like mushrooms, because nobody's putting fentanyl in mushrooms. Like that just
Right.
doesn't happen. So, because you're looking at an actual fungi, like
Yeah.
there's nowhere to put
Right.
it. Or they're like in gummy form or chocolate form. So, you're not snorting things. Whereas, with Coke or with ketamine, all it takes is like literally this much fentanyl to overdose. So you've really got to be careful.
Well, let's talk about a hypothetical here.
Sure.
I'm just going to make a person up. This person's name is not Scott.
Okay.
So it's hypothetical.
Uh-huh.
If this person that was not Scott tried some small doses of mushrooms, he might feel elated and in a great mood.
Yeah.
But if it gets too high of a dose, he might start hallucinating and maybe not feel quite as energetic and sexual.
Yes.
However, if this same not Scott person were to take a dose of MDMA or ecstasy, it might be very, very different. Sometimes those drugs can really affect how sexual and aggressive you feel in these party environments.
Yes.
Which can be really, really good or really, really bad, maybe depending on your environment. So let's talk about that drug in particular, MDMA or ecstasy, or the differences between those two things and how you could safely use them.
Yeah. Absolutely. So this not Scott person,
Right.
bless him, bless them. We don't know their gender. It's because it's not Scott.
They, them. It's a they,
them.
Yeah.
There are differences between MDMA and ecstasy. MDMA is the pure compound. Ecstasy is usually MDMA, typically laced with something else. It's stepped on, as they say in the drug world. So maybe there's some coke in it, maybe there's some meth in it, maybe there's some heroin in it. Like you never quite know with ecstasy. It's more of a mixed bag. Whereas MDMA, it can be hard to get the pure form. But it's has minimal hangover the next day. You typically can only get it from someone who is like a therapist or a medical professional. Like it's harder to get to like that therapeutic grade MDMA. Right. Very, very difficult to find. Ecstasy tends to be a little bit speedier because it's almost always cut with some sort of stimulant. And so when you get that like kind of racy, you're grinding your teeth, you're like, you feel good, but you're also a little jittery. Like that's more ecstasy. I've had both. I strongly prefer MDMA personally.
I have heard that there are actual psychologists, like doctors, that are able to prescribe that. Is that true or not?
That is
MDMA
true.
For therapy.
Yes. Typically, right now, it's more in clinical trial settings.
Yeah.
But MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, just had a huge conference in Colorado like a week and a half ago, and they had over like 12,000 people descend upon Denver, and like it's getting big, and therapists were there and they were getting continuing education credits. So like it's coming, and we're moving toward a place where it's going to get rescheduled so that people can prescribe it. Medical doctors can prescribe it. Therapists can't prescribe anyway, but they can work with a psychiatrist who's an MD who can prescribe. So that window is going to happen in the next, I would say, year or two.
That's awesome. We've been reading up on the medical and therapeutic uses of MDMA and psilocybin and marijuana, and it's just incredible. The therapeutic uses. I mean, the things that people can overcome trauma and depression, and I mean, just so many useful benefits for this. Definitely. It's absurd that it's criminalized.
Well, it's going to put a dent in the pharmaceutical industry, budget, which is, of course, what they don't want. And, all of that is to say, this is why I'm no fun at parties. I love psychedelics, but I do not recommend them with strangers.
Yeah.
Or in a party setting. Like, when I teach about sex and altered states, the people that I'm teaching are people who are in relationships with people that they trust. And there's sort of stages that you go through of, okay, we're going to do whatever substance it is in a non-sexual setting first. We're going to do it together. We're going to see how we feel. We're going to, go outside, look at pretty pictures, dance to the lights, whatever. And then the next time we're going to do a little bit of sex. Like it's an incremental process in getting to the point where you can like do a full trip and fuck the whole time. And now microdosing is a little bit different. Like if you're doing a super low dose where, if you think a starting to trip level of psilocybin mushrooms is like 1.5 grams. A microdose is between 0.1 and 0.3 grams, or like 1 to 300 milligrams. So tiny amounts. The whole idea of microdosing it is that it is sub-perceptual, where you feel a little like relaxed and kind of pleasant, but not tripping at all. You can still have conversations.
Yeah, you're not hallucinating. Things
you're
don't
not
look
hallucinating.
Distorted.
Yeah, you might feel a little bit just like, oh, that's nice. Again, that's what we're going for. The that's nice.
Yeah.
But if you're rolling, if you're on like a full MDMA roll and you're like, all right, time to go to the neon party at Hedo, like let's hook up with some hotties, maybe don't.
Yeah.
Maybe just stay with your partner and fuck in a public place.
Be
and don't
safe.
Play with other people.
Yeah.
Because are you thinking about safer sex? Are you thinking about, consent? Are you thinking about your relationship agreements in those moments?
Well, and if your partner is also doing that, then you don't have a safe person to help guide you. Yeah. So having a safe or a trip sitter, I think is what they call it, is safe.
Yes.
All right. Well, all right. So good. So we've got some notes there on things that we should adjust, but and hopefully you'll be able to talk in more depth about each of those substances. Absolutely. At Hedo. People will be able to pin you down and ask you questions there because you're trapped for a week with us.
Oh no. Do you have a preference? Because psilocybin or marijuana for sex?
It's not an either or. It depends on what you're going for. Because cannabis is a much shorter window. You're high for an hour or two versus 4 to 6 hours. I think, especially in like a Hedo type environment, that's going to be a little bit better. Unless, again, you're microdosing and then it doesn't matter as much. But like, if you're like, oh, do I want to trip on mushrooms and have sex, or do I want to use cannabis and have sex while I'm in Jamaica?
Yeah.
If you're doing mushrooms, plan to be in your room for the next 4.5 to 6 hours. It's just going to cut down on your time. And you want to do lots of things. You want to swim, you want to work out, you want to party.
Yeah.
Well, so it is legal if you live in the States, say in Alabama, but travel to a state where it's legal. It's legal to do it in that state, correct?
Sure.
But it's not legal to buy it in that state, bring it back to your home state, and do it there, correct?
Correct.
Is it even legal to transport it from state to state?
Technically, no, because if you're crossing state lines, that is now a federal thing, and it's only legal within the confines of the state.
What if you had marijuana and took it to Jamaica? Is that illegal?
Oh, you definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
How are you gonna...
So let's talk about international law.
I'm just asking for the new people.
Did you see my face go like, oh fuck? Yeah, no.
I know, mine too. I'm like, wait.
Customs will take your ass to federal prison.
I'm like, is Scott asking this for Scott?
Just for the new people.
Yeah. Do not bring weed across international border. Do not bring any drug across international borders. Like when I go to Canada, here's a perfect example. I went to visit my boyfriend who lives in Canada in March. I flew into Buffalo, so he drove across the border from Toronto to come get me in New York and then drove me back over. Before he crossed the border, where it is legal in Canada, he took his weed out of his car, stashed it at like a gas station behind a pole, drove across the border, picked me up, and then drove back and went and got it. Like, you just don't cross international borders with drugs.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Because I don't know if you like to be raped in prison, but that's how it happens.
You do not want to have to deal with prison or the fines that they will slap you with if you do that.
All right.
Or the no-fly list.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, that's good. All right. Good information. So don't buy it. Don't buy it at Hedo Weedo in Jamaica and then bring it back.
And try to take it home with you. Nope. Don't do that either.
Yeah.
Smoke it all there.
Yeah.
Or give
it away. Bury it. Do whatever you got to do.
Yeah.
Well, so do you have any other ideas about, and we can edit this out if we need to, but do you have any other ideas about things that you're wanting to do other than drug-related stuff at Hedo? Tell us what you got. Give us some sneak peek at some ideas you may have.
Fuck yeah. So one of the things that I do want to teach is hand sex. So I am the queen of hand jobs and pussy massage. And so I'm planning on using my boyfriend as a demo cock and giving my like epic hand job lessons, and then let him show you on me how to do like really good pussy massage, because he's excellent.
Yes.
And I can talk you through what he's doing. So we're going to do lots of that kind of skill building.
I'm going.
Yes.
So can we do that poolside at the
Fuck
new
yeah,
pool?
we can do whatever you want.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah, that's
He's
good.
such a show off. He's like delighted that we're gonna get to like go be like center of attention, having sexy times together. So we're gonna do that. Prostate stimulation and anal play is another thing that I love to teach, because so many people do anal badly, and I want people to enjoy anal.
Yeah.
I spent most of my life being what I would consider like anal avoidant, where I'm like, do not stick it in my ass. Absolutely not. It hurts. I don't like it. Blah. And then I slept with someone who is an expert in anal, who actually wrote the book on prostate stimulation. And I was like, oh, anal can be amazing, but you have to do it right. And so now that I know how to do it right, I want more people to know how to do it right. And I love playing with
I want to know how to do it right.
Like prostates are so much fun to play with. And I had a date with a new lover last night, and he's like, I've had some like terrible experiences with people just like sticking a finger in my ass, like without conversation. And I'm like, no, sweetheart, no.
I don't want to brag. I think I am great at prostate play.
Yeah.
Scott he likes it. But I need to I want to like anal so bad, but I just don't. So you'll have to teach me.
I got you. My workshop is actually called From Anal Avoidant to Butt Slut.
That's perfect.
Yes.
So
I want that.
That
I want
one
that
for
title.
sure. And then dirty talk.
That'd be good.
Love teaching dirty talk, because it's really just sexual
Yes.
communication.
Yeah.
That would also that would also be great at the pool over the PA system.
Right. All right, now slowly take your clothes off.
Well, everybody will already be naked, but okay.
Slowly
I'm doing
massage your nipples.
Yeah, that voice got me.
Right?
Well, this is going to be so much fun. We are just under 6 months away now from
Oh my
the
God.
first day of this thing, so
I
it's
know.
getting close, and we are going to launch our app for the event on August 1st, which will bring
September 1st.
Oh yeah, sorry, September, October. Yeah, that's right, September 1st. Which so that everybody that's going can come in there and get to know each other. You'll have profiles, and we can chat and communicate, and you guys can get in there and interact if you want. And then on, I think it's November 1st, is when we will do our little virtual online
Meet and greet.
teaser summit with all of our presenters. You guys, the whole team, will be in there for all of the people going. It will be free. But for anybody that's not going, but there'll be a little fee if they wanted to charge and be a part of it. So that's coming soon as well. So we're excited.
Amazing.
Well, Ashley, we appreciate you being here again. Can't wait to see you here in about 6 months in paradise. And
I can't wait. And, as a sex and relationship coach, if you want to do sessions with me, like coaching sessions while we're in Jamaica, I am available for that. It's an add-on. You will have to pay for that. But I do sessions. Dr. Shannon Chavez, who you guys just had on, we do sessions together. And they are not hands-on sessions. It's just talking. But if you want some experts to come in and like really help up-level your game, it's a great chance to get some one-on-one time with us.
Yes, and that will be available in the app where they can book straight with you guys your time in that app to make it easier for them. Until then, though, can you tell everybody where they can find you right now?
You absolutely can find me on Instagram at Cannasexual. My website is cannasexual.com. That's CANNASEXUAL. I do offer coaching to clients, either women or couples, virtually through Zoom. So it doesn't matter where you live, you can work with me. And then Shannon and I do concierge coaching. So we will actually you will fly us to wherever you are. and we'll do like work with you for a weekend or a week, or, if you want to kind of have a deep dive experience where you don't have time for weekly sessions because you're busy, you're an entrepreneur, you've got like crazy stuff going on, but you can dedicate a few intense days. We offer that as well.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
That's
That'd be
awesome.
great.
Yeah. What a great service. All right, guys. And if you want to get to meet her in person, join us at Hedonism Resort, January 6th through the 13th. Ashley Manta, Shannon Chavez, Luna Matata, Kate Gordon. We've got all kinds of experts, super all-star team. But book now because it's filling up
And you
quick.
can go to either our website and look for the Be Better at Being Bad Week. That's the name of the week. The link is there. Or you can go directly to Hedo's website because you will need to book directly through their website. So
Yeah.
That's great.
All right, Ashley, thank you so much. And we will talk to you soon.